and pickups. And we have a guest.
That picks that up, I'm sure.
So if one of you guys on your phone go to our Facebook page or YouTube TCD NMRA Media, it should be. And hello, everyone. Welcome to our Twin Cities Division live stream. I hope you can hear me. I think you can see me. And we have a special treat for you tonight that David Hamilton has invited us to his Burlington layout. And we're going to do some railfanning and a layout tour and answer some questions. We have a mobile cam. We got a railfan cam set up. We have all kinds of options going on. Thank you, Joe. And so I'll try and say hello to everybody. I want to say hello to everybody who said hi. Steve Childers, welcome for joining us. Tim D, Jeff Jones, Dan's Model Railroading Journeys here. Graham Stockfields, all the way from down under. Hello. And Facebook users here, and Joe Fear. So here 5x5. All right. So we'll pass this over to Ken. Is Ken ready? And then David can tell you a little bit about his layout. So
He's over in lacrosse right now.
okay. See if he'll come over by you and then he can talk to you, or you want to show lacrosse.
Go ahead and give me camera.
Here we go. There we go.
Hey, good evening, Tom. Here I am in lacrosse, and we're watching an SDL 39 classifying a cut of cars. And Matt Malowitz is our engineer right now. Matt's on the TV. But we're going to come back to Matt. But right now we've got a tour, and we're going to bring this out as he's pulling down the yard lead to do his classification. We'll take a quick tour of Highland Brewery. And Franklin Ironworks. La Crosse is really a busy industrial area. But this is our treat for tonight, guys. The management of the CB&Q has pulled out of retirement, this beautiful Zephyr, and that's what we're going to take our tour with. So in the background, you can see Stoddard, and again, more of the industry. We've got Milwaukee down here, and Dave's going to take us on a tour. Dave, so where do we go next?
Well, I suppose we should start by getting on the train, but we'll leave from the Burlington Lacrosse station. Not exactly a perfect replica, but it works. So the railroad is based on the Burlington between Lacrosse and East Dubuque, Illinois. So that's what we've tried to do down here. Most of the town names that we're going to go through are accurate, with one exception. And that's where the famous geography bender was invented and designed to relocate, part of Minnesota to a closer point in Wisconsin. But we'll pass that eventually. So if you're ready, we'll get started.
All right, let's head on down and take a quick peek at the Zephyr, and we are ready to roll, Dave.
And that's the Concord Zephyr.
The Concord Zephyr, Dave says.
And it has a generic sound decoder in it. Unfortunately, I don't know that there's any real Winton sound files available. So we just had to wing it with that.
It sounds great.
We passed through, after leaving Lacrosse, we went by Stoddard. And then the next area is
Genoa, Wisconsin. Notice how much scenery he's got in this nice, narrow little area.
Yeah, that scene in the corner there that he's passing through now is relatively new. I think I did that last summer.
Beautiful new scene that Dave added in the corner. And a great part about it is it gives you something to focus on as the train disappears and goes around the corner. So now we're going to go over and visit where Joe is working a local
In Prairie du Chien.
in Prairie du Chien.
So that'll be our first station stop. In Prairie du Chien.
Go slower, Ken.
Yep.
So as you can see, our Zephyr has come into Prairie du Chien, and we have taken a station stop. While we're doing that, we're going to just peek over the top where Joe Binish is doing some local work.
Trying to get my cars in the right spot. Practice. This takes practice.
As you can see, Prairie du Chien is very busy area on the CB&Q. As Dave mentioned, a few industries have been geographically bended into Prairie du Chien, but that's okay. That's what we like. So now we'll come down here and take a look at this will be Eastway Estates when the urban sprawl comes this way. But right now it's just a beautiful scenic bluff, typical of the river area. And we're going to sit here and railfan and watch our Zephyr come at us. A lot of the track along the river is double tracked, but there was a bridge that caused the Burlington to go down to single track. We're approaching that area now. And so we've just gotten the green signal. And we're on to single track. as we go down over the
Wisconsin River.
Wisconsin River. All right.
Yeah, he said try to stay in one place as much as you can as opposed to walking with it.
All right, now I'm going to walk over to the other side and watch the train come back. So hold on to your lunches. Oh, whoa. Hello. Did you take the
Bring it over here, Ken. I'll fix it.
okay. I think I hit a button to turn it off.
Yeah, you're good now.
Okay.
I think.
The train's in East Winona now. So I can add some information if you want to read it.
Sure. Tell us about East Winona, Dave.
Well, this is where the geography bender was put into place. There's another room just to the right of where the train is.
Yes.
And, it had to be something, so I made it into Winona. So it's about 100 miles from where it should be, but so what? So right now, the Burlington actually had little passenger sheds at East Winona. So that's where the train is sitting now. Eventually, there'll be some little signage and passenger shed there. And the Burlington had a presence in Winona, but they used to take their passengers by bus to the depot that was in downtown Winona. So whether or not that happens remains to be seen. But another legitimate stop on our journey.
So even though you do a geography bender, you do maintain correct usage of the space for the Burlington, right?
Pretty much. You know, I tried to keep it as accurate as I could. This is the infamous swing gate. The way the basement is built, we had to have a duct under. So this is a legitimate swing gate. It's cooperating tonight, so that's a positive. We're coming up on Cassville, Wisconsin.
All right, so we're going to go around the Dairy Power.
Dairyland Power, another legitimate location. That's Lacrosse Milling in the background. I picked that up and moved it about 60 miles from where it should be, but it's a neat looking structure. So
Absolutely.
All Walther's kits that have been reshaped and adjusted to fit the space.
Lots of traffic, but notice that Dave has tastefully put just a few little lighting features in there to add interest. Guy out on the back deck smoking.
So that's a station stop now in Cassville.
Okay, we're going to walk up and look at the station stop here.
It's a flag stop too, so I think there must be somebody getting on there today.
Yeah, somebody that was late for our tour came up here to Cassville and got on.
Yeah, that'd be a good spot to just stand there and pivot.
Just going to stand still here and let's see. Generous curves so that the passenger cars look great. Perhaps you can see a few hobos back there with the flickering firelight.
That's where we crossed the Illinois Central tracks, just outside of East Dubuque, Illinois.
Yep.
And we'll make another stop here in East Dubuque.
While we make our station stop here, I'm going to give you a little bit of a look at downtown East Dubuque. So, Dave, has this been gentrified, or what era is this? Are we looking at here?
Well, the railroad itself is now 1970.
All right.
I bumped it up a year. It used to be 1969 down here, but I decided I needed some BN locomotives, so we made it 1970.
All right.
Probably up until the mid 80s, East Dubuque looked exactly like what I have there. I took pictures of a bunch of the buildings and duplicated the names on some of them. So it's just an old river town. That bridge in front of you is US Highway 20 that goes across the Mississippi River from East Dubuque into Dubuque, Iowa. And, right now there's a sign on the back of the bridge that says, "Welcome to Illinois." So,
Oh, sure.
yeah, so if you could get in your little miniature car, that's where you'd end up.
Right. So the great part about this, Dave, is you really set yourself in geography. We know right where we are.
Oh yeah, and for real world reasons, that's the Illinois Central track in the back that crosses the Burlington tracks just outside of East Dubuque.
So the Illinois Central's got different color ballast?
Yep, exactly. That's that kind of reddish brown color. So, and what surprises some people is that the Burlington actually had a freight house in Dubuque, Iowa. So when we operate inside of that tunnely mountain looking area right there, there's a Burlington switcher that was, it stayed in Dubuque, but it would cross the river into East Dubuque a few times a week to swap cars that were left here. The real tunnel, if you go teleport yourself down to East Dubuque, is about 300 feet long, and it curves inside. So, now you'll see CN and Illinois Central, whatever else is rolling through there. The Burlington doesn't have a freight house any longer in Dubuque, but there's a marine museum that's been built in the rebuilt Burlington Freight House in Dubuque, Iowa. So our cameraman, much to his chagrin, is actually standing in the Mississippi River right now. So I think it probably would behoove us to get rolling again.
I have a question though.
Sure.
It looks like we have triple tracks here.
Yeah,
what are we
they
seeing?
had the Burlington had a number of center sidings, and there was one right outside of Dubuque.
All right.
So
the middle track is actually a siding.
Yep.
Excellent. Thank you.
So now we go back into staging. My staging yard is out in the open. It's not hidden staging. It just sort of worked out that way, but that's what we're approaching now. So during an operating session, all the traffic starts and terminates here in the staging yard. So there's quite a few trains staged, as you can see. Now I'm going to keep rolling. We're just going to go right through staging. And again, now from an operating point of view, those industries that the train's passing now are part of North La Crosse. And we're going to loop around the back side of North La Crosse, and then we'll end up back in the La Crosse freight yard.
All right. Matt, how's your classification coming?
Well, I'm going pretty good. Just double checking my tracks, making sure I have everything classified, and there are certain cuts depending on which train it could go for whatever destination.
All right. This is a good time to switch over and watch Joe with his operation cam, if you've got that over there. Tom? There you go. Great.
All right, Joe is switching which town again?
Is that working pretty good so far?
Joe
is switching Prairie du Chien.
Prairie du Chien.
Is that right? I thought maybe it was named after some kind of a French Indian.
No.
It's named after a chicken, isn't it?
Prairie as well. Prairie.
Yep. So, Joe, during an operating session, how much time would you spend here in Prairie du Chien?
Couple hours probably, and there would be trains going by on the main lines either way, so you can't use these tracks. So you're limited to these tracks here, and there are enough industries and enough cars that are pulled and set out that you have. It's kind of a puzzle. It's not annoying, where like sometimes they can switchbacks and that kind of stuff. But there's a lot to think about, and you really need to be on top of what's going on. And keep track of the cars so that you don't put the wrong car in the right spot or the wrong spot.
So, Joe, this would typically be a turn. You'd come out here in the morning, work the day, and then go back in the end of the work shift.
During an operating session, this train starts out from the yard that Matt is switching in lacrosse, and then you come over here, pull off onto the siding, and start your work.
Excellent. Excellent.
I like coming over here because I sold some cars to Dave, and I like to see him put to work.
There you go. You want to work Stoddard?
You could have somebody come out and do that. I could get Matt to run out and work Stoddard before we do Winona.
Okay.
Say that.
Yep.
You can venture out on the main line if you want to do some Stoddard switching.
Okay. Or do you want?
Or we could go into Winona with.
Let's have somebody get ready there, and then we'll go into Winona.
Okay, well, so he could.
Is he in Winona now?
If you go in Winona, do it slow.
I'll open the gates.
Right, but you're not. I'm off right now, right?
You're off now,
Okay, why don't we go over to Winona? Let me swing this open because it's easy enough to do it. And Matt was going to start, and I'll just say something when we get over there. So whenever you're back on, I'll talk about Winona.
All right. We're ready to go there, boss. Hi, friends. Welcome to Winona, Minnesota. Dave, you want to tell us a little bit about Winona here while we're watching Matt do some switching?
Well, sure. A number of years ago, I had something else in this room. I experimented with working in a different scale, and it was just getting to be too much work to have two different railroads. So I left the bench work, removed the track and the equipment, and converted it to HO, and I made it into Winona. And again, it's not where it belongs geographically, but everything else about it tends to be fairly close. All the companies in here, all the customers are real names. The Burlington, up until the early 80s, had a presence in Winona. They had one switcher that worked in Winona. They shared some track with the Green Bay and Western. That's why there's a Green Bay and Western locomotive back there.
Okay, there it is, right in the middle of the scene.
Yeah, the Green Bay and Western actually had more customers and more traffic in Winona than the Burlington, but it's my basement, so I can do it my way.
You bet.
So that little yard behind the RS over there is the Green Bay yard. Does everybody else. So maybe in 6 months or so that'll change, and we'll let them, swap a few. But Froderick Malting, Watkins, Bay State Milling, Peerless Chain, Gamble Robinson are all legitimate customer names. if nothing else, I try to do that on the whole railroad. You know, so there's only a few fictitious names. The bulk of the names of all the customers are real. And I just get the information out of the different shipping guys and whatnot. And that's probably as far as it goes, because I'm sure they all generate more traffic.
Hey, Dave, I got a question for you. What's with the orange with Omaha green lettered Great Northern?
It looks kind of neat, doesn't it?
It does.
So
You get that off a box of Cheerios, or what's up with that? Is that a real paint scheme?
I'm not sure, to be honest with you.
Okay.
But it looks good.
Yeah, never mind. We'll ignore that question.
That's ignored. There's a few things I don't have answers for, you know, so you just have to sort of hope for the best here.
So this malting corporation has been a big part of Winona for a number of years.
I know it's under new ownership now, but you know, Florida was all over Wisconsin. They had a site in Milwaukee. And it seems to me there's a few other states further east that, you know, Florida also serve. The Armor Fertilizer plant in the back. That's loosely based on what was really in Winona. Gamble Robinson, you know, when you come around the bend, you know, it's a food warehousing company. And they got a pretty large facility in Winona. And Winona connects to the rest of the railroad through the doorway here. That's where the bridge basically goes over the river, the Mississippi River. And the other end of the bridge track is East Winona, where earlier we made a passenger stop with the Zephyr. So.
Is that bridge still in? Do you know?
No, it was vandalized and sometime in the 1980s and burned. It was a shoe bridge. You know, the Burlington had access to it, and the Green Bay and Western had access to it. I'm not sure if the Chicago and Northwestern also used it, but it was vandalized and burned. Some of the piers or abutments, some pieces of the bridge, I think, are still in the river. But you can see, I suppose, if the river level got really low. But yeah, Winona is a work in process.
Yeah. Now, there's some questions about that we're asking people about if they want bills. So I'm going to flash in on them here. Dave, you want to tell us a little bit about your card and waybill system?
Yeah, it's, you know, it's all from Micromart. It's their cards and waybills, and you know, it's a nice, simple operating system. This particular part of the railroad, I made up individual boxes for each of the customers, as opposed to just having a set out whole pickup box. So when the operator is working any one of those customers, all he has to do is look at the car card, and obviously if the car card still has the location name, you know, in the to section, then you're not going to move the car. It's going to stay there. If it shows a new destination, you pick it up. So some of the guys like it, and some of the guys say I should go back to the old way of doing things. But right now, that's how we're doing it. So these are all the customers over here. You know, there's 2 spaces in here for the Burlington yard, and then each of the customers has their own box.
So as Dave says, that first waybill says St. Paul, so it's ready to be picked up and moved out.
Yep.
This one says GN West.
That'll be picked up.
And this one says Winona Scrap, so it stays.
Exactly. And during a session, for whatever it's worth, a transfer will come over from the Burlington yard in La Crosse, and sometimes they'll bring a new cut of cars over here, and sometimes there'll be more cars than others, and then he'll pick up any of the cars that have been picked up that are going back. You know, going back means that they're picked up from Winona and they go back to lacrosse, and then they either go east or west out of lacrosse.
Great.
So some of them end up going to Chicago, some of them end up going to Galesburg, Illinois, some of them go to St. Paul, some go to Minneapolis. So that's the way that works.
Great. So Dave, there's a question here on your AP certs. So I'd like you to walk over by the AP certs for me.
Sure.
So tell me about how your building your layout has gone into helping you do the AP search. So tell me what else you've done to get to things.
Well, association volunteer, that was service to the hobby. So I just served as a clerk and treasurer for the Fox Valley division in the Chicago area. And then up here, I was the clerk, the Twin City division clerk at one point.
Okay.
And I became the Thousand Lakes region treasurer a number of years ago. So I put in some time doing that. I do a lot of operating, both at this railroad and other railroads. So that's how I got the chief dispatcher. Probably half of the time for chief dispatcher, or maybe not half, maybe a third of the time was on this railroad, and the rest was on other Twin Cities railroads. The electrical certificate is for everything that's here, just according to the NMRA rules. So everything from track buses to decoder installations to indicator lights, whatever, that all made up the electrical certificate. Model railroad engineer civil. I had an S-scale switching layout down here at one point, and I did the turnouts and a crossing. Stood in for that part. Then the next certificate is for scenery. And there was a section when we were going through Cassville, Wisconsin, and East Dubuque, Illinois. That was all redone a couple summers ago, and that's how I got scenery certificate. And I don't have the certificate yet, but I have one for rolling stock or freight cars, which required me building some, scratch building some freight cars and super detailing other cars. So that one was just issued, and I don't have a copy of it yet.
Great. If you go to the TCD NMRA, we have a great video that we took of Dave explaining how he got his master builder scenery. So that's a terrific video. So you want to switch over to the Joe Cam, and we'll make another location switch here, Tom. There you go.
Okay, so this one's off. Okay, I gotta help you out. I thought I had fixed that. I put gaps in it and brought on new feeders. I thought I had resolved the issue, but evidently I haven't. So it's installed on here again. And then if you want to just take a locomotive here, let's just see something. That's not going to do it. I have to get my meters.
Yeah. So Dave, you got a second here? Okay, you want to give me some camera here for a minute, Tom? There you go. Right now we're at Dave's workbench, and he was talking about just receiving the certificate for cars. The Burlington is a scratch-built gondola. The Burlington Northern is a scratch-built flat car. The whale belly car is a resin kit that Dave built. So, of course, not scratch-built points, but still achievement points. Again, another guy that he built, scratch-built, and another flat car. All exquisite work. And this has all been done by other divisions, and so the instructions have been shared, and Dave and Tom will also share how they did theirs. So all you have to do is reach out to us at the Twin City Division, and we'll give you a hand building your cars also. Okay, back to you, Tom.
All right, we'll watch Joe operate for a bit here. Looks like Prairie du Chien is a busy place, kept him going all night. And I don't know if he's going to get ready for a run through or handing cars off to the next train here. And maybe we can see some mainline trains go by. That would be good. We'll do some rail fanning. And we can set them up there. We got about 15 minutes and we'll wrap her up. If anyone else wants to see something, please type it in the comments.
Let me get the
Want to look at motive power? You want to look at lacrosse?
Zephyr out of it.
Are these batteries good there?
What's the size of this layout? Wonder how long has Dave been building this layout?
Dave, how long have you been building the layout?
I started it in 1997 or
1997. Okay.
We bought the house in 92.
And what's the size? All right.
I'm going to get this out of the way, and once this is out of the way,
Lacrosse Depot with the big bear on it. Ken's got the cam going. Yeah, just leave her right there. It won't be that laggy. That's pretty good. Yeah, Steve, East Dubuque. Dave put a lot of work into that. And I like that you recognize it. And other people have too, for the gritty town that is in the late 60s. There's a lot of little vintage things David has done with the light ups, the interior lighting on structures and the details. Ken's kind of showing the
so once
Stoddard.
So is this the C&W side? Or Milwaukee?
Milwaukee.
This is the Milwaukee, and then behind me, behind me is the C&W. I'm in a little nook here, and two operators can come in here and
One of the things that's really unique about this is he's created this canyon type area. Sorry.
So I'll answer more questions.
All right.
It looks like you're in the Milwaukee Road part of lacrosse.
we do have a question for you, Dave. We do have a question for you. What's the biggest problem you had in building the layout?
In building the layout?
Correct.
I don't know. I was fortunate enough to have a large space, and I just went at it.
What's the size?
Altogether, the railroad occupies just under 1,000 square feet. So it might be 997 square feet. The only part of the lower level that doesn't have a railroad in it is a utility room and a bathroom. So, I took over the rest of the space, and I just kept expanding it, like into the Winona room and my Milwaukee Road lacrosse, and that gave me a reason to buy some Milwaukee Road locomotives. So, you know, you have to do things logically, even if it means making things up, right? So those are my favorites, the GP30s. Weathered by Joe Binish, expertly done, I might add.
Airbrush will travel.
Exactly. Yeah, those are old proto locomotives. And yes, the gears have been replaced. I think they have first generation soundtracks, decoders in them too.
So show the Burlington on the wall there.
There you go.
Okay, so Dave, how many cars are on the layout?
At any given time, it's just under 300 cars between trains that are in the staging yard and all the different industries on the railroad. So there's, you know, if we started counting now, we'd get awfully close to 300 cars.
Any scratch built buildings on the layout?
There's a lot of kit bash buildings. Ken's looking at one back there now, that power plant. And, you know, I could point out all the kit bash buildings, but it's easy enough to put two kits together or rearrange the walls. And some of these certainly just have blank sheets of styrene on the back of them. But I'll never tell you which ones are like that. So, yeah, they're almost all these are Walters kits. And sometimes there might be 2 or 3 kits, as a matter of fact, combined. I noticed that you guys are looking at all the calendars. That's a subset of the main hobby, is collecting Burlington calendars. And the Burlington issued them up until about 1966. I think I have about 26 calendars altogether. So my original quest was to try to get one for everything, including my birth year. And then I found out that they didn't print one in the year I was born. Now, I don't know if that was because of me or what, but you know, there'll be a hole in the collection. I find them on eBay, and I've bought them in antique stores. I'm not going to give you a signal. You can just. Oh, wait, I will give you a signal. Okay, you're clear. This is a kit bash, the one that looks like that grain elevator. That was from an article in Model Railroader, I don't know, 12 or 13 years ago. So I use that as my inspiration. It looks like I never finished putting in the windows, so I could work on that tomorrow probably.
There's always tomorrow.
Yep. I like grain elevators, and grain elevators are neat.
Graham asks, are the kit bash buildings based on actual industries?
Yes. So if you were to look, Alice Chalmers, which originally was called Lacrosse Implement, the Dairyland Power Plant in the background, Gateway Foods right here where we're standing, those are all real lacrosse area industries. Again, almost every company name down here is legitimate. Northern Engraving, Lacrosse Garment. There's a Evans Warehouse over here, Franklin Ironworks, G. Heileman Brewing. They're all real. So they might not have been real in the year that we're representing here, but they were real, you know, on lacrosse shipping information and Winona shipping information. They're all real. So they're not all the buildings might look exactly like the real ones. The Lacrosse Implement Alice Chalmers, that one over there, the few pictures that I've seen, that one's actually fairly accurate. There's a building way back on the side over there that represents Lacrosse Milling, which is in Cochran, Wisconsin. And I took pictures of that, and then I pretty much tried to duplicate it with the Walters kits. So it's not unusual for me to, you know, when I do a good job of making it look like the real thing, I'll have real photographs that I usually have right in the area. you know, so I can show people this is what the real thing looked like, and this is what mine looks like. There's a section in Winona behind Bay State Milling and Peerless Chain. And the last time we were in Winona, I took a picture of the alley, if you will, and I have that over there. So that came out to be a fairly accurate representation. So again, there's a certain amount of license that's taken down here, but at least place names and customer names, I've tried to keep that fairly accurate. I think there's 1, 2, there might be 3 on here altogether that are named after friends or acquaintances. Otherwise, they're all legitimate names. So, anything else that I can?
So your biggest problem. So did you initially have a DC or DCC?
No, it was a DCC railroad from the beginning.
Okay.
I moved here to Minnesota in 1992. When I lived in the Chicago area, my brother and I had built a CTC 16 power system that was, featured in Model Railroad back in the 80s. So we moved here in 1992. I had to finish the basement. By the time the basement was all sheetrock and whatnot, and I started building the railroad, Digitrax was already starting to make inroads. So I believe I visited a few railroads in the Twin Cities here that were already Digitrax users. So I gravitated toward Digitrax. So this railroad has been DCC from day one. And I think the first sound decoders went in probably after the 1999 NMRA convention, which we hosted. That was also the first time I was on a layout tour. It was for the 1999 NMRA convention. When we did that, we did not have this peninsula. So the peninsula was added after the convention, much to my wife's surprise. It just sort of happened.
Uh-oh.
Now, this is only the second time that this passenger train has ever run. So we're going to hope that there are no malfeasance from the various cars on here. So take it easy. We'll hope for the best.
All right, Dave, what is next in the way of tomorrow projects?
Oh, brother. Well, I've got on the desk behind Tom, there's a number of locomotives that need some tweaking, including some decoder work. There's a bunch of areas that, some scenery enhancement would be nice to take care of. I don't work with any logical plan. I just see what kind of mood I'm in when I come down here, and then I do it. So I can say this, though, that because it's an operating railroad, it takes a lot of work just to keep everything up to snuff. This basement is 60 feet long, and the lower level of the house here tends to be a little cooler than the rest of the house. And I can say with all truthfulness that periodically there's seismic events that cause some track misalignments. So that's always the first thing, especially here in the winter time. Although tomorrow is the first day of spring, there's certain little track things that occur. There's a lot of maintenance that has to go into it before I do the fun stuff. Because I always, after a session, I always try to take care of any little glitches, whether it's a coupler falling off of a car or somebody having a problem at a turnout someplace. So I try to take care of that stuff before I do the fun stuff.
Speaking of turnouts, are they all hand thrown or a mixture?
The mainline turnouts have tortoise motors on them, and they're controlled for the most part from a dispatcher panel. The rest of the railroad has either Blue Point turnout devices or Caboose Industry throws. And again, there's, I like the Caboose Industry ones, but I had a good time with the Blue Points. So there's quite a few. Matter of fact, if Ken was to pan around with the camera, you can see a whole bunch of knobs on the fascia right behind us here. And those all control Blue Point turnouts. And I, especially because there's some of the track work, some of the turnouts are back in there a little bit. And I think it's easier to try to control them with mechanisms than to be constantly reaching into the scenery, flipping turnouts. And they're just simple. I use model airplane, like radio control linkages and dowel rods to do it. Although now if I do a blue point, I've started recessing the knobs into the fascia. I don't know if I'll ever do it on this section here or not, but another project is going to be adding more interior lighting. I have a number of just plug lights from Woodland Scenics and the Rumettes. I guess he calls it Rumettes electric wallpaper. So a bunch of the lit interiors in these buildings are done with that particular product.
So, two things. I want to know what code track you used. And if you and Ken could go over to Dubuque, everybody wants to look at. They said you did a really good job at that.
Sure.
So if you could walk through Dubuque.
We have a helicopter parked over there. It won't be a problem to get there.
You want to take me off?
I'll take you off and go to the railroad.
Yeah, so should I,
What code track are you using?
half of the railroad, or about 75% of it, is code 83. And some of the stuff that I, just under half of it is code 100. As I've been expanding the railroad, I've gone to code 83. So Winona, the area that you're sitting in, the Milwaukee section, this is all code 83.
Oh, Dubuque.
Yeah,
That's right.
So next question, how do you uncouple?
well, right there. Here's the magic uncoupler.
Well, they can't see it. If you want to go to the camera over there, see where Joe is behind you there.
Yeah. My assistant will show you one of the uncoupling tricks. We love the assistant, sir. Yes, I love the assistant. And we just use those uncoupling, like skewers with an office supply buffer on the top. If you will.
So skewers.
So I'll go over to East Dubuque now. I believe Ken has already landed at East Dubuque.
Yep, I'm here looking where the train comes out of the tunnel, which is really an interesting scenic point. Again, you can see that it's a different, you can see the ballast indicating it's a different railroad. And that's such a nice little detail that helps you. They have a relatively inexpensive little hut for the track maintenance people. But again, you can see it's Illinois Central. So that tells you this is a different railroad. Really neat. Right down to the track maintenance car, which is also Illinois Central. So let's go back down into East Dubuque, and you can tell us more about it.
Sure.
So there's a question here that says, have you cut off all your trip pins?
Nope.
No, you have not. Okay. So as a spectator, let me point some things out that I think are really neat. So you're putting lights in all your cars?
A lot of them are Woodland Scenics vehicles with the
Okay.
lights built into them.
All right.
And one of the comments is that they're awfully bright headlights, but I have to, they all have potentiometers as part of this Woodland Scenics Just Plug system. And I can adjust the things, but I just haven't, so right. Some of these vehicles, the headlights are a little bit brighter than they need to be, but I could say they're on their high beams.
Right.
Yeah, that's
right.
it. They're on their high beams.
So Dave, just to be real clear, every time you mention Woodland Scenics Just Plug system, are you getting a kickback?
That's between me and Woodland Scenics, I guess.
We don't know. So we can't disclose whether he's being sponsored or not.
There's also one of the Woodland Scenics Just Plugs N-scale water towers on top of the bluff there, in case you hadn't noticed that before. A little forced perspective.
The little blinky light out there. And what does the sign say?
Which sign? One
On the. Oh, that's a microwave tower.
Yeah, no telling what might be up there. There's probably
Okay.
some pigeons up there too.
All right. Well, it's a good time to be here because we see the Zephyr is just starting to come into view. And who made those units?
I think they might be Broadway Limited,
Okay.
BLIs,
BLIs.
but I'd be lying if I told you I remembered. So
Yeah, I like that
have to-
Mars light.
I have to look on my Decoder Pro roster and see. I just simply don't remember.
All right.
In case any, I mean, there's about 40 locomotives out here, you know, and I can't remember who made every single one of them. I mean, they're you know, a lot of, it's a good variety. Some Broadways, some Athearn, some Atlas. That's a Cato business car on the back.
All right.
So, and again, as far as the buildings in East Dubuque,
Yep.
Again, I took the Just Plug system, and that's what does all the, you know, the power routing, so to speak. And there's a company in Canada, and the product is Roumettes, and they also, you know, they're like little flat printed cardboard deals, and you just fold them up to fit in the buildings. Now when they advertise them, they say they're for this Woodland Scenics building or this design preservation building, but I ignore that part and I just put them where they're needed.
Sure.
And you'll also notice that the buildings aren't entirely lit. You know, either the store is lit or one room might have a light in it. I figure that looks better.
Right.
So the street lights are from Woodland Scenics. The billboards are from Woodland Scenics. The traffic lights in the intersection there, those are Walther's sequential traffic control signals. And I think they still offer that.
Yeah, that's great. I just happened to notice that the light we're looking at was green, went to yellow, and now red.
Yep. And so at one point, you know, every one of them will be red, and then they cycle and start all over again. I don't know if there's a policeman over here or not. If there's not, maybe we should get a patrol car and park it out there just in case somebody runs the light.
Yep.
So
there's a question while I'm right here, and they ask if you have a turntable and a roundhouse on the layout.
Sure. There's one in La Crosse, in North La Crosse, and it's a Walther's turntable and a scratch or a home-built, scratch-built roundhouse that a guy gave me when I lived in the Chicago area. I used to operate on a railroad, and the man that built the railroad, when he passed away, he left me his roundhouse. So it's a plaster structure that was built in the 60s on his model railroad, and I inherited it in 1992 or 1993, and we could walk over there. I mean, if you want to.
Sure.
You know, add it to the collection.
There's the light just turning red. So do you use the roundhouse and the turntable a lot? I see you using mostly diesels.
No, it's not used a great deal.
Okay. So Tom, can you switch to another camera and I'll walk over to the roundhouse. Okay, let's go over there.
I've actually been thinking about taking it out and replacing it with just some like service tracks over there.
All right, we're here looking at the roundhouse.
Right, and again, so the roundhouse itself it's all plaster that my friend Bert Ahrensfeld built back in the early 60s, and I made it fit.
Great.
So, and that's like a 90-foot turntable, but that's what fit into that space. So there's no reason why we can't use it, but you know, it just hasn't really been a factor in the operation here.
I noticed that in addition to keeping the Zephyr, they've also kept one steam engine for fan trips.
Oh yeah. Yep, that's I bought that in 1997 or 98, something like that. So it doesn't get run very often. Matter of fact, I think it could probably use a good run in.
A lot of power waiting to go. Whoa. Do y'all see the staging?
Yeah, so the staging is right back here. So there's
I'll start on. So I'm going to start here. And Dave, talk us through staging.
there's 8 tracks in the staging yard. So during an operating session, there's 3 eastbound and 2 westbound trains that are staged in here, as well as a coal train, as well as another local that leaves from staging and then comes back into staging. And there's a Green Bay and Western train that's on one of the tracks, and a Chicago and Northwestern job. So, once again, there are 8 tracks, and during an operating session, when we do the full session, everything in here is operated, everything runs at some point. The coal train goes from here over to the Dairyland Power Plant in Cassville, Wisconsin. The Green Bay and Western cut travels the railroad and ends up in Winona, and drops and picks up some cars from the Green Bay and Western yard in Winona, and then comes back over here. They're custom painted locomotives too. Once again, my friend Joe Binish, one of my operating assistants here tonight, painted them. So, and there's another one. There's an FA1 over on the 2B serviced bench. So this is the Green Bay and Western cut. Alco power, no smoke, but they're pretty sharp looking locomotives. The SDs are on the coal train, and so right now there's, I don't know, 12 cars or so that are destined to go over to the power plant. And so during an operating session, there's always a train moving on the main line, and the trains that just run east and west have a cut of cars that get set out for La Crosse and all the related towns around here. The cars that are left on the train go back to either Galesburg, Clyde Yard outside of Chicago, Minneapolis, or St. Paul. So any one of these staged trains just drops a portion of their tonnage in La Crosse. So the entire train is never dropped, just X amount of cars. And the longest track in here holds about 20 cars. So, on a 20-car train, there might be 6 or 8 cars that get set out in La Crosse. And whatever they set out, they can pick up. So that's what keeps the yard fluid. So the yard is fed from the staging yard. So all the trains that are going to go to Prairie du Chien or East Dubuque or Cassville are fed from the traffic that runs through here. So it's a pretty, again, it's not an overly complicated operating system.
Right.
It has, I act as a dispatcher because part of the railroad is indeed a single track. So somebody has to control the traffic, just because it's a single track where it goes over the river. And it's a single track where it comes into La Crosse. A few years ago, the trackage through La Crosse was double tracked, but in 1970, it was a single track that went through the yard in La Crosse. And that's what I've done here. So there's a dispatcher panel that controls the mainline turnouts and the signals. So they're not, there's no detection system yet. Even though I started putting in detectors, it's another one of the projects that will get done someday.
Okay, I've got a couple more operation questions.
Sure.
What's your train lengths and how many operators do you need for a session?
Trains that come and go from staging can be as many as 20 cars. The locals that go out in the turns will have anywhere from 8 to 12 cars. The coal train that's sitting in here has, I think, 12 or 14 cars on it now. During most sessions, we have 8 people plus me, because again, I'm usually the dispatcher. So there's, normally 8 operators. And some jobs, depending on a person's experience, we've done like conductor and engineer. You know, if somebody's new, you know, we'll just send them out with somebody that's more experienced as a conductor and engineer team. You can run the railroad with, you know, just 4 or 5 operators, or one time I had 12 or 15 people down here, and we just doubled up all the crews. So,
Right.
and during any given session, if some trains don't run, then they'll get run the next time. And if some trains end up tying up when the session's over, you know, just a regular dog catch thing, we'll just pick up where we left off. So we don't have to run every train during the session. So the sessions usually last, again, depending on the crew, between 2.5 and 3.5 hours. So,
How many times a month do you operate, Dave?
well, obviously the COVID thing changed it, but we've been averaging about 18 sessions here a year. I belong to a Tuesday night group, and I host them once a month. Before the you know, the COVID summer, we were having some Saturday operating sessions, 4 or 5 of those a year, and then every once in a while, just, you know, you just invite people over. So there were many years when it was 18, as many as 18 in one year. I've been a host on our Minrail operating event since 2009, and a couple years or maybe 10 years ago, ProRail was here, so I hosted a ProRail session. Yeah, I think, you know, I'm pretty sure we've had over 100 sessions on the railroad.
Right.
You know, especially, I retired 11 years ago, you know, a couple years early because I needed to work on this more. So there's been there's been more sessions since we retired, you know, than before.
Right.
So yeah, and again, there's a lot of projects I started putting in a detection system. We were going to have a regular computer type dispatcher panel, but I haven't finished that. I have a phone system that's in the garage, which doesn't do me much good down here since it's in the garage, but eventually that'll, you know, it's either going to be that or radios, and I might do the telephones because I sort of like using the telephones. At some point, I'll let somebody else be the dispatcher and control the mainline turnouts and the traffic and signals, you know, with my dispatcher panel, whether it's my piece of sheet metal that I use now, or if we let it migrate to a computer NMRA system. So there's lots of stuff to do down here.
So Dave, we've seen your all the things you've done to be active with the NMRA. Give us a good reason why anybody that's on this podcast or this event watching, why they should join the NMRA.
Well, I think it's nice to hook up with other NMRA members at different meets and whatnot. Their magazine usually has some pretty helpful hints going to the different events. You know, I've certainly met and attended some interesting clinics. The standards obviously mean a whole lot, whether it's couplers or turnout standards or DCC standards. So it all adds up. And I've been an NMRA member, I don't know, since sometime in the 70s. I didn't start pursuing the AP program until 1997 is when I got the first certificate. So, and it took me 25 years to get 7 of them.
Great.
But at least I achieved that. You know, I did get 7 AP certificates. So yeah, why not? You know, now that they've gone to a digital magazine, which will start April 1st, I think that's going to be pretty exciting. You know, to be able to reference all that digitally. So join.
Yep. So as Dave points out, in April, not only do you get the magazine digitally, but all the back issues are digitally available. And that's really pretty incredible.
Yeah, it'll free up some storage space. So you can
Recycling companies will be really happy.
Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, I have a good time with this. I mean, it's a pretty fun hobby. I'm fortunate to have an understanding spouse, and I've been able to take over the whole lower part of the house, so that's worked out pretty good. And my wife's actually involved in some aspects of the railroad. She's done some detailed painting. We both learned how to paint clouds on the walls for the scenery certificate. She's helped in numerous ways, so that's a big part of it. I think, assuming that you're in that position, if you can, if you can do this with, your partner's assistance, or at least their support, that means a lot.
Absolutely.
It means a lot to me, and I know a number of guys that are in the same position. So,
yep.
So lucky me.
Absolutely. Do you get down here most days, Dave?
I'd be lying if I said I'm down here every day. I spend a lot of time down here, so it'll run in cycles. I mean, we've been doing a lot of stuff lately, but with the weather starting to get better, there's a good chance that there'll be fewer visits down here. But again, because I host a session every month, there's a certain amount of time that I do have to come down here, restaging all these trains, making sure that the cars ended up in the right spots, the paperwork procedures. I try to rotate some of the cars off the railroad periodically, so all these freight cars just don't go back and forth, and make sure they don't, with the exception of coal cars or covered hoppers, they never go back to the same customer that they were at. And there's a bunch of drawers right down here that have even more freight cars in them, so we try to rotate them off and on the railroad. So there's keeping up with the operating sessions takes a certain amount of endurance, I would say.
Perfect.
So.
Okay, Tom, back to you.
All right. Want to thank everybody for tuning in and participating. We'll get all you guys together and we'll have them say goodnight. And we can put your Ken Cam up here. So I'm going to say thanks to David Hamilton for hosting us.
The Ken Cam.
It's died. Okay. Well, we'll miss out. You can just pull it out of there and I'll hold it for you. But we'll thank David Hamilton for hosting us, Ken Zeska, Joe Binish, Matt Malwitz, everybody from the Twin Cities division of the NMRA. And we're going to say goodbye, and then we'll...
Should we go over by the rail cam?
Yeah, I know you guys can stay right there. They're fine. And...
Okay.
So Matt, are you an NMRA member?
We're gonna pressure Matt into this right now.
Are you a member of the...
All right, say goodbye, guys.
Say good night, Tracy. Good night.
Yeah, good night. Thanks for coming by.
Thanks, you guys. All right. Thank you, guys. Good night. Hopefully, feedback will do more of these, and we can enjoy it.
Yeah, it is.
Thanks.
I'm on your coat.